Hey friends, welcome back to another Northbrook Next Gen podcast. And if you are listening to this like you normally do, just know we now have video. So thanks to Tara and Hannah and her team, Northbrook has a YouTube channel with video. So if you want to actually see us, feel free to switch over to our YouTube channel. But today I am so excited as we start 2026 to have a guest that has been on the podcast before. Pastor Jenny Heckman is joining me today. Jenny is a licensed counselor, and she has been a pastor at Northbrook for 3 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. And I'm so grateful for Jenny's knowledge for our staff. And so I'm so grateful that she is here today to talk about the mental health battle that our kids, grandkids, friends are experiencing and how we can help. So thanks for joining me today, Jenny.
Thanks for having me. It's such an honor and also such an honor to be at a church that takes mental health seriously.
So last year we had a parent night, and I thought what you said was so helpful, even for me as a parent, also as a pastor. And so I just wanted to spend some time today talking through some of the things you said and getting some insights from you. So whether we have parents or grandparents or just influencers of the next generation listening, I thought your content was so helpful.
Thank you.
So here we are. We're in 2026, and it feels to me that there's more awareness around mental health than perhaps 7 or 8 years ago. Certainly, COVID, I think, did a lot of damage, but maybe it also illuminated some mental health things that were already happening, but now we have greater awareness. And yet, it feels to me, and I'm be interested in your thoughts, but it feels to me we still have a way to go.
We do.
When it comes to mental health. Mm-hmm. And I know occasionally I'll talk to someone and they're like, I'm tired of talking about mental health. And well, if you have good mental health, great, good for you. But it feels like even though I do feel like there's greater awareness, we still have a lot we can learn.
Yes.
So today, first off, let's start with what's the first thing that you want parents, grandparents, caregivers to know about their kids' mental health in 2026?
The first thing touches on something, John, that you just said, that we're getting weary of talking about mental health, and also sometimes feels like the amount of talking that we do doesn't lead to changes in outcome. And I agree with that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we've been talking about the wrong issues for a long time.
Interesting.
There are some authors that talk about looking at the far enemy too long when we really need to look at the near enemy. And I'm so grateful that we have more information from all kinds of good, valid sources that I think have really identified what the enemies are to mental health, especially for kids and for adolescents, certainly for adults too. Mm-hmm. But I think the first thing I always like to encourage parents with is to keep in mind that parents are probably doing much better than what they believe in terms of their kids' mental health and their teens' mental health. In
That's
terms
encouraging.
Of what they can give and what they are giving as a parent.
Yeah, I feel like as a parent, you constantly hear, keep your kids off screens and do this and do that. And it can start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing such a bad job.
Yes.
But you're saying parents need to give themselves some grace, that they're probably doing better than they think.
Yes. And one of the things that I have certainly heard, I've certainly experienced it myself, and hearing it more and more as I tune into the people that mentor and train me, is that part of the reason that parents feel, both parents who are current parents, but also young couples that are considering becoming parents, is that there's something interfering with their intuition and with their confidence. Mm-hmm. And that's what we call the culture of therapy. And the culture of therapy is the way that I would describe it is that we have more information than we have ever had before.
Yes.
Thanks to the internet and all kinds of other mechanisms, which in and of itself is a good thing. But now I think we have a little bit too much information.
Okay.
And the other thing is that there's some terms that have belonged to the clinical world of mental health that now have become, the therapy culture has owned it, but it has owned it in too broad of a category. And also there is inaccurate information that is given about that category. So like, for instance, the word narcissism.
Yeah.
Everybody's a narcissist. And that's a direct result of therapy culture.
Sure.
So a lot of the differentiation and the nuances have been lost because of that. But I think as a direct result of the amount of information, what I've heard from parents is that parents are feeling a tremendous amount of pressure to become their own subject matter experts.
Yeah.
And we're
sure.
not we're not omniscient people, and that's a little bit too much of a burden. So I think that's interfering with parents' intuition and confidence. But one of the first things that I think about regarding times where I've seen parents' intuition work in their favor, and I don't know any other way to do this except to share some personal stories, and that's not because my husband and I were the greatest of parents, but these are two that stand out to me.
Yeah.
But we have 4 children. They're all young adults now. But when my oldest daughter was 16, I noticed that she was becoming quite despondent, very irritable, and would have strong reactions to just about everything, even things that were benign. I know some of that's adolescence, but we just had this sense that this goes above and beyond what would be considered normal adolescence. And so what our gut told us is that she needs to be seen by somebody and probably needs medication. And we followed our intuition. It's always hard to come to terms with that. It's always hard to consider medication. But we did it. She was diagnosed with both anxiety and depression. The doctor got her on a wonderful medication that's good for adolescents. And about a month later, I was driving her somewhere, and out of the blue, she said to me, "Mom, thank you so much for getting me in to see someone and getting on the medication."
Wow.
And I said, "Tell me what's made the difference." And I'll never forget her comment. And it was something along the lines of, "I now worry about things that normal people worry about."
Wow.
And it was just a good reminder to follow intuition.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end of it, when my oldest son was in middle school, he had a middle school teacher during conferences that told my husband and I, we really need to get him evaluated for ADHD. And she gave us some of the reasons for that, and also shared that her son was recently diagnosed and she was seeing some of the similarities. And we knew that he had some trouble concentrating and he was distractible and he would hone in on certain things. But there was something in our gut that really told us, I don't think this is ADHD.
Yeah.
And so we let it go. And it got worked out. Like by the time he got to be a senior in high school, that all got worked out. And he ended up at a great university, graduated in the top 10 of his business school, is living a very unhindered and productive life, relationally as well. So again, those are just 2 personal stories where we trusted our gut. But I've certainly seen that from parents too, that they just have this sense that they know what's going on, or they want to hold back on something, or it's time to move forward on something.
Yeah. That's encouraging. It gives parents the power to say, okay, God's given you your children, and sometimes while wisdom can be involving other people, sometimes you do need to trust.
Correct. We need
small
both.
Yeah.
We need both.
Yeah. Very good. Another thing you mentioned in your talk that I thought was interesting was it's not all bad news. Jonathan Hoyt's research would suggest that there is a group of young people whose struggles are rising more slowly. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes. So going back, Jonathan Haidt has done, and his team has done probably the best research on mental health and in particular the impact of technology, social media, things that are stealing childhood, brain development, all these kinds of things. And one of the things that he mentions is that globally, starting in 2010, 2011, that we saw mental health problems increase. He calls it's like on the graph, there was a hockey stick. It was a level line, and then it went up like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
And they now trace that all back to globally, in particular places that you never see these kinds of issues. These mental health needs were going up like the end of a hockey stick.
Yeah.
And now we know that that was because of the introduction of social media. But over time, what they discovered is that there was a group of children and adolescents that did not have that sharp of an incline. And as they looked at the research, it was the kids and the adolescents that answered yes to this question on their assessments. Religion is an important factor in my family.
Wow.
So what he would say, his theory is that he would call it more like conservative religious homes tend to have children that have less of that sharp of an increase in mental health. That doesn't mean that they don't have any.
Sure.
But the severity is very different than where a rooted church-based family life is not in the picture.
Yeah. Which is really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And encouraging, I think, to families that follow Christ and have their kids in a faith community. It's encouraging to know, aside from all the other benefits, that is one that Jonathan discovered, and he's not even a Christ follower, so he's not. I wouldn't even say he's biased towards that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And he makes some really good points about why that is. I think sometimes Christian parents I've found, and I was one of those too, we get very hung up on teaching our kids the truth. And that's very important. But I think what he's starting to uncover is that there is something about, number one, having an obligation to a faith community, going with your family, and also typically kids and teenagers who are in church have a lot more interaction with other generations, and that's really healthy. There are also some restrictions on their freedom, and his whole point is that too much freedom is not good for any human being. It's anxiety producing.
Yeah.
And so all those factors go into that. But I was very surprised by that for a couple of different reasons. But I think also, like you, very encouraged to hear that.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, so aside from having your child in a faith community, you mentioned 9 other pieces of advice for parents that are looking to help their child either maintain good mental health or improve their mental health. So I'd love for you to walk us through those 9 pieces of advice.
I will walk you through these. Some will be very brief. Others I'll flesh out a little bit more. And by the way, I told people at my presentation that these are not exhaustive. There are more, but I think these kind of capture the essence of the ones we know really work and are the non-negotiables.
Yeah.
The first one was to spend time together with your kids. And I think, again, in our culture, parents oftentimes make the mistake of thinking, I need to create fun, stimulating events for my kids and I to spend time together. And I just want to debunk that myth. I mean, I think about the biblical narrative, both Old Testament and New, and there's just no getting around it that you see that Christ and families are interacting through the mundane, ordinary, everyday things of life. And so that spending time together, yes, events are great, holidays are great, but there's nothing that takes the place of these sliding door moments where you're in the car taking your kids to school or to a sporting event, or you're crossing paths in the kitchen in the morning. having a couple of family meals a week, those kinds of things are really important, as well as just carving out time for families to be able to get away from their busyness, to sit down together, play a game together, watch a show together, whatever. But I think the big takeaway is spending time together, but that time doesn't have to be a big event type of thing.
Yeah, I love that because I think sometimes when you think about mental health, you think it's got to be, to help your kid, it's got to be super difficult, like a ton of work. And sometimes I think it's nice just to realize that simple things like eating a meal together can be a blessing to your child.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is parents have to be prepared because your kid is going to tell you this is boring, but don't believe it. Because when they look back, trust me, they will look back on those times as being the best memories of their time with their family.
Yeah.
Are those mundane, everyday times together.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
I think the second big one is to talk about and validate your kids' emotions. And the one thing I'll say here, and my goodness, I've learned this through my own inner work as well, is that that's very hard for parents to do if they don't have language for their own emotions.
Yeah.
And they've never learned or never had anybody validate their own emotions.
Yeah.
Emotions are neither good or bad. They're just there. And typically we don't choose them. They just show up. And so a parent's job really is to be what we call a co-regulator, to provide a big, roomy holding environment for your child to be able to say their feelings as they feel them, as they experience them. Not to fix, not to try too quickly to tamp them down or get them turned around, but just to be able to listen with understanding first. And that seems to be crucial for the prevention of mental health problems, because emotions that can't be articulated and expressed and held by other people, they almost always go into the body, they go underground, or they come out in aggression.
Yeah. When parents talk about emotions, is there anything else you would say that parents should think about that will help build resilience in their kids instead of reinforcing perhaps fear or anxiety in their kids?
It comes down to the parent's reactivity.
Okay.
Or not. You know, the goal would be that a parent can learn how to respond with calmness rather than reacting to what they're hearing or what they're seeing their child or adolescent's face
Oh, that's so
do.
hard though.
I know it is. Yes. I mean, it's hard for any of us. I think it's one of the hardest skills
Yep.
of being an emotionally intelligent human being to get better at.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, is it crucial, because most of the time kids and adolescents, they show up really big.
Yeah.
And if a parent reacts really big, it just intensifies the whole experience and can then create some anxiety for your child.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really good at catching myself after the fact, going, oh, I just reacted.
Yes.
It's a little harder in the moment.
It is hard in the moment.
But
I've been there.
I get that it is important.
Yeah. We've already touched on this, but engaging kids with older generations is so important. You know, and I think a church-based family is one of the best ways to do that. And even if kids are not necessarily directly engaging, just being in a community that is heterogeneous in terms of age is really important. I also think that when children have grandparents that are still living, to be engaged there. I think it's good for kids to see that their worlds are not the only ones that there are, and also be open to the wisdom that the older generation has to teach. We just know across the board, like cultures that are healthy are very intentionally intergenerational. And that's harder to do in a culture like ours, where ages are separated, and oftentimes the older generation is kind of put away out of sight.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, Fuller has done a lot of research on what makes children, teenagers stay followers of Jesus after high school. And one of their big correlations was when a young person has a caring adult, besides a parent. Parents are important, but when they can have one more caring adult, whether it's a grandparent, uncle, church member that is influencing their life, the chance of them staying a follower of Christ dramatically increases.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and so not only is it good for their mental health, but even just in general, following Jesus, it's great to have those extra voices in their life.
And we get to see that this relationship with Jesus actually translates to something that holds over time. There's so much hope in that.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And of course, every teenager goes through that phase where their parents know nothing. And that's when you need those other voices.
Absolutely. I think a couple other things are, to simplify your life where you're able. And I know that's very hard. I think it does require some sacrifice on parents' part and hurdling a little bit of fear and anxiety that somehow their kid is going to miss out on something or their child might be bored. But to really pay attention to the pace of life, the complexity of life, and how that impacts a family, but also how it impacts your particular child. But I think that's a seasonal conversation for parents and discernment.
So I have a phrase that I haven't tested out on anyone. I'm going to test it on you, and you can be honest if this is correct or not correct. Here's the phrase that I've been thinking about. Boredom, when it comes to teens and children, boredom is good for mental health.
I could not agree more.
Okay.
It's also the precursor to creativity.
Yeah.
And distress tolerance.
Yeah, I think somehow, I know I felt this pressure as a parent. It's like my kid can never be bored for me to be a good parent. I don't know I don't know how that message came to me or what it is about our culture, but you feel like you're a bad parent if your kid's bored. And I've had to coach myself that actually boredom is probably good for them.
It's really good for them.
Yeah.
Yes, and remember, you and I, there's an age gap between us. So you and Shalana have also been very influenced yourselves by social media, which keep things moving, right? I was not as a parent.
Yeah.
I actually remember being at a kids' camp that I was a volunteer at like age 20. And the main speaker told this group of 250 grade schoolers, it is a sin to be bored.
Really?
Because God's good creation has so much richness and meaning and play and things to enjoy and get involved in. At first I was really shocked by that. But the more I thought about it, more heard him flesh it out, I think there's really something to pay attention to there.
Yeah.
So simplify and don't be afraid of boredom. And of course, giving kids responsibilities at home. I know kids are busy, but there is a lot in the research about obligation in your family's home, whether it's unloading the dishwasher, feeding the dog, walking the dog. It doesn't have to be, you're not having your kids clean the whole house. But where there are chores that are their obligation, it seems that kids do better mental health-wise when they have a sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose, and honestly, investment in a family life. And also, getting back to this restricting your freedoms, this is a place where, it's good to have some of your freedoms restricted to help out the family. And of course, that's within reason, but there's just no getting around that's what we're seeing is really important as well.
Yeah, and as I've researched what generations have done before us, I get more and more convinced, not to guilt myself, but just to maybe to encourage myself, that our kids can handle more responsibility than we usually give them in our homes.
Yes.
Like they're capable of whatever it is, like to do the dishes or like whatever that next chore is where you're like, are they old enough? Like unless it's dangerous, they probably are.
They are. And we also have to really play it forward, John, to think about them in their 20s, 30s, 40s. We want them to develop the competency as well as the tolerance for chores.
Yeah.
They're boring. They're not very rewarding. But we instill that, early. Yeah.
So feel free to blame us. Say, Pastor Jenny and Pastor John told me I have to give you more chores at home.
Yeah.
We'll take that.
I said this one time to a group of mothers and daughters at a presentation, and I'm not kidding you. There was a 16-year-old in the front row that gave me such the stink eye. Like I was almost afraid to run into her after when I was talking about this. But yes,
well, if kids come up to us and give us dirty looks at church, we'll know why now.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then I think just a couple of other things, here. We just cannot emphasize the importance of sleep, physical activity, and what you put in your body.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, when I'm in my practice as a clinician, and certainly some of the best clinicians that have mentored me, many times what I've learned is that we cannot assess what is actually going on until sleep is better, hydration is better, a person is moving their body more, and all those basic self-care. Now, I am aware we are in a crazy culture that is so extreme about these things.
Sure.
That is not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just the baseline, getting enough sleep, putting decent things generally in your body, getting enough activity. It's very, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easy to overlook.
It is very easy to overlook, which is why I always mention it. It's not the be all and end all, but it's a baseline that we need, regardless of what else we have to treat there as well.
Yeah.
So I used to know a psychiatrist this was still when they would write prescriptions on a pad. I don't know if you ever remembered that.
I've seen it in movies.
You've seen it in movies. Yes. I experienced it in real life many, many times.
Okay.
But on her little prescription, she would write the prescription for the medication. And then underneath, she would say 30 minutes of exercise a day, 80 ounces of water, and eat your fruits and vegetables.
Wow. Okay.
So it's just a good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Go to church. We've already talked about the reasons for that.
Yeah.
And then I always want to encourage parents to never underestimate their role of being an agent of hope and healing. I think part of the thing that concerns me so much about all the information that we have, too much information, is that parents are feeling very paralyzed.
Yeah.
And oftentimes will delegate some of the gifts that they have actually as a parent within them to professionals. And not that professionals aren't important, because they are, but to have confidence that their love, their support, their availability, and the boundaries they set for their kids, these are all ways that they're agents of hope and healing.
Yeah.
So most of the time, by the end of this, when I walk people through these things, there's always a looming question for parents, and I want to be able to address it. And that is, okay, I'm doing these things, and I'll work on these with my kids and in my parenting, but how do I know when it's time to get help? And I think this goes back to some intuition, first of all, and that is when you know your child, you really know when something is off for too long. So again, kids are going to have bad days. They might have a couple of bad weeks, but typically the rule of thumb is that when you start to see a shift and experience a shift in your child's mood, or they withdraw, or they're a little bit more irritable and aggressive, their appetite might change a little bit, or they might have some sleep disruptions. If that goes on longer than 2 weeks, it's time to start to ask some questions and at least reach out to a pediatrician or a primary to kind of start to just ask those questions and get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good rule of thumb that I've given to people and that I've followed as well. There seems to be something important about that beyond 2-week window that we pay attention to.
Yeah.
There.
That's helpful. Yeah. Because I think as a parent, you're always wondering, is this normal? Is this not normal? When is it time?
Right.
Yeah. That's helpful.
Right.
Those are all great. So helpful. In your talk, though, you also referenced social media. And especially, really with all of us, but especially with teens, young people. So why is social media so negatively affecting our teens?
So it's affecting them for a number of reasons, but this social media is the near enemy that has now been identified at the root of all kinds of emotional dysregulation, fractured attention, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, the whole gamut. But the reason that social media is the problem, and by the way, it's not screens that are the problem.
Okay.
It's certain types of things on screens. So for instance, things like TikTok, Snapchat, and Instagram, along with YouTube Shorts.
Okay.
Those are really the kinds of things that are causing the most problems. And even if you think about the way that those platforms are titled and advertised, it's quick,
Yep.
it's short, you get a hit of something that a kid or a teenager glues onto, and then what I call the very evil algorithms will continue to give you more.
Yeah.
But what happens when something is intense, it captures their attention, and it is short, is that the brain releases very high levels of dopamine. And then that brain will start to seek the hit of the very same thing and a little bit more rapidly, and the algorithms will give it to you. But what happens, because the brain is so marvelously created by God, is that the brain is recognizing I'm getting way too much dopamine too quickly. And it starts to pull back dopamine or really reduce the sensors in the brain that pick it up when this child or teenager is not using these platforms.
Sure.
So things like motivation for homework, for chores, for the dull and mundane things in life, they don't have it.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we know that girls suffer from more depression and anxiety and low self-worth because of these things. And we know that boys tend to become much more aggressive as a result of use. So everybody has fractured attention because of it. They are emotionally dysregulated, but all of the reward centers in the brain are rewired. Now, the good news is that 72 hours off of these platforms, the brain will adjust back to baseline.
Wow.
And that's very good news. If parents and teachers and grandparents have enough perseverance to tolerate the 72 hours of withdrawal, because they're a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And so in addition with that, I know you mentioned 4 ways or 4 norms, I guess you could say, to help our teenagers with their phones.
Yes. And by the way, these aren't my 4 norms. They're Jonathan Haidt's 4 norms. And he calls them, these are a recommended movement that he proposes become, again, cultural norms for societies. And there are 4 of them. He talks about a norm of there should be no smartphones before high school. I mean, clearly that eliminates social media.
Yep.
But it also eliminates all those notifications and pop-ups that kids and teenagers get on their phone that are very distractible. He recommends no social media before age 16.
Okay.
And that's because of all the brain things we talked about.
Yeah.
He talks about having phone-free schools, and I know that there's some local schools that have now implemented this. You walk in the door, you put your phone in a type of bag that is left in the office or some designated place in the school, and you do not have it until that the day is ended.
Yeah.
And then the final thing that he talks about is that kids need to have more independence and free play. And some of that will just naturally occur if they do not have smartphones and their social media is either non-existent or limited. But those are the 4 norms that he is really pushing from his research. And he's not the only one. I think he's the strongest voice with the most evidence behind it. But I'm very grateful. I'm hearing more and more that there's more organizations, schools that are beginning to take at least some of these under consideration and implementing them.
Yeah, that's so good. So I've talked to parents in 2 camps. One is a group of parents that are like, well, it's too late. My kid already has all the things. There's no restrictions. And I always just try to encourage parents, it's never too late to dial it back, right?
Yes.
Just like if you found out that your kid was driving 100 miles an hour in their car with no seatbelt, you'd probably figure out a way to dial that back.
It's a really good analogy.
And so it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of whining and groaning, but you can pull it back.
You can.
And you have support in that. And then secondly, for the parent that is still has younger kids maybe, and they're still, thinking through these decisions, one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was it's not everything or nothing, right? So like even when you give them a phone, to your point, there are certain apps that are probably going to be worse than others. Not every app is created equal. And so even when you give them a phone, you get to control what they use that phone for.
Yes.
And so just that thought of it's not all or nothing. Everything should be a conversation when it comes to the phone of how they're using it, how long they're using it, what they're using on it. And I think that has helped me feel like I'm more in control than, I gave them a phone, so now I can't do anything about it.
Yes, that's really good wisdom. And we also know that parents are very hesitant to do this by themselves, that they really need a community that would share the values and the norms and that they would commit to doing it together. Because it is really complicated for parents to think this one through. But I think your wisdom is super helpful, John. And again, we know that things on phones and screens that are slower moving, that have more of a storyline, educational things are really not bad. It's those quick hits of things that release the dopamine that are the most problematic.
Just one more pickleball video, just one more, and then I'll stop.
Well, it depends on how quick moving.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Any last thoughts for parents? We've covered a lot, but any last encouragement you want to leave them with?
Yes, and I think I'd say they're not last thoughts. I think they're the most important thoughts.
Okay.
That is a great place to end. The first is that everything that we've talked about very much aligns, I think, with the whole concept of shalom, that total well-being, mind, soul, body, spirit relationships that the scriptures talk about, that the Old Testament speaks to, that Jesus embodies, that the New Testament letters invite brothers and sisters in Christ, the body, to embody and to practice. So this isn't something that's just coming out of left field that doesn't have some roots in the biblical narrative and truth, because it really does. I heard one time something that was so helpful for me, and that is that it's every generation's responsibility to be able to translate the gospel and the practical application of it into its current culture. And I think this is one of the ways that we pick those concepts back up biblically and put them into a framework that really touches on the actual experience and struggles of our kids and our families. So that's the first one. And then the second thing is the reminder that we never do this alone. First of all, we are indwelled by the Holy Spirit, who enables us, empowers us, equips us. And also, the Holy Spirit is never in the business of giving us too much information or these quick hits that leave us wanting more. I'm always taken with Jesus' words at the end of the Gospel of John when he's talking to his very discombobulated disciples, saying, I have more to say to you, but it's more than you can bear, more than you can handle right now. So I've got a solution for that and some comfort. I'm going to come to you in the person of the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will lead you and guide you into all truth. And that is the God that we have as parents and grandparents that is leading and guiding us in doses we can handle, and then we dispense that. And then also, of course, we have the church community as well that we ought to be leaning on, learning from each other, supporting each other, resourcing together. So those would be my two big words of encouragement as we wrap this up.
That's really good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Such a good conversation. As we wrap up, friends, just a reminder that the thing that makes the Northbrook Next Gen podcast unique is this is not just us speaking at you and then it's over, but this is a relationship that we have with you. And so feel free to reach out to Pastor Jenny. She's here at Northbrook. An email, a phone call to the front desk will get you connected with her. You can reach me through email or give me a call or see either of us on the weekend. If you have any follow-up questions or any piece of advice that you would like. Also, we have other resources. If you're looking for a little help, we have parent mentors that would love to walk with you. We have life groups for parents in each season. So please don't think of this as just one and done, but this is just a continuation of an ongoing relationship that we have with you as we look to partner with parents, grandparents, caregivers that are looking to influence the next generation. So thanks for joining us today, and look for another Next Gen podcast next month.